Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of UFO aliens and weird stuff. So, we are continuing with police sightings around the UK. Right, and then I will tell you the story of the 1967 flying cross sightings. Exciting stuff, right? So, the first police sighting, okay, was in 1957, so we'll do that. And it was in Cobridge and Glamorgan. Right, now, two uniformed officers observed a green-blue UFO as it passed over South Wales, right? 5 minutes later, two other uniformed officers saw the same object as it passed over the Rhondda Valley. Now, the object was described as being delta-shaped and travelling at high speed, and several civilian witnesses also observed the UFO. So a great sighting. Okay, so then we go to 1962, and this one was in Dartmoor, Devon, right? A senior police officer in a newspaper article confirmed that two officers on mobile patrol had had a UFO encounter over Dartmoor. Now, he said that the officers had chased the object along country roads where it seemed to stop and hover before disappearing, right? The officers submitted a long report about the incident, okay, and it was classified as UFO classification. Now, that was 19th of the 8th, 1979. The Sunday Mirror printed that one, okay. Now, in 1963, in Charlton, near Shaftesbury, Wiltshire, an on-duty uniformed police officer, a PC Anthony Penny, reported seeing an orange-coloured UFO flash across the sky in the above location and disappear over a potato field. Now, this is the cool thing, right? Where days later, a large spherical crater measuring 8 feet was found, right? 2 days after his sighting, a large crater was found, right? The crater appeared from nowhere in the field, and within its centre was a hole 3 foot deep. Now, the diameter of it, now this is a bit cagey, was between 5 and 12 inches. All right, so I don't know why they couldn't have got that down a bit, though. And then radiating from the centre of the hole were 4 slot marks. Now, they were 4 foot long. I don't know, about that big, eh? They're 4 foot long, and they were 4 foot long. Sorry, they were 4 foot long and 1 foot wide. That's quite big, isn't it, right? No cause could be found for the appearance of the crater or the marks. Now, the crater was investigated by a bomb disposal unit, but no satisfactory explanation was ever found for it. And the mystery was even mentioned in Parliament on the 29th of July by Major Patrick Wall, and he was a Conservative MP, right? So that is a great sighting. So a bloke or a policeman saw a craft, we'll call it, and then 2 days later, that was found. Got to have landed, gang. Got to have landed. Right? Now, the next one is 1964. Okay? And this is in Shoebury Ness in Southend, Essex. A PC crook was on patrol when he observed 3 fast-moving objects in the southern sky. Now, remember this, right? They were spaced in a line. The colours of the object was off-white, and their shape appeared to be oval, and that is the important thing, right? And also, they were seen above cloud height and travelling at great speed with no discernible sound. Because the officer did forward a report to the Air Ministry, who stated it may, right, be 3 Lightning fighter aircraft flying in formation. All right, but the thing is, the shape was oval and it was silent. All right, so I'm not buying that personally, right? The next one is in 1965, right? Okay, and the location is Warminster, Wiltshire. An on-duty uniformed police officer, a PC Eric Pinnock, was on foot patrol of the Bishopstrow area of the town when he observed a large, bright silver ball-shaped UFO hurtle through the sky before it disappeared over Sutton Common. Now, he said it was a giant plate of light. It lit up the whole horizon with a glare, and it was flying low over the landscape and appeared to be spinning. Now, during the mid-60s, Warminster was a haven for UFO spotters, and there was literally hundreds of sightings made in the area. And we have spoke about that, right? They called it the Warminster Thing, and a bloke called Arthur Shuttlewood made a book about it. Now, the Warminster Thing was more, I would say, atmospheric noises than it was UFOs, but obviously UFOs were spotted. So we're not surprised in 1965 a policeman saw a spherical UFO there. So it's a great story, right? Same year, all right, but in Basingstoke, Hampshire, an on-duty uniformed police officer, a PCJ Harwood, was speaking with a member of the public outside the man's home when they both observed a tadpole-shaped UFO with a large green dome on it. All right, it was seen only briefly as it sped across the sky from south to north at an incredible speed. Now, the object was estimated, of course it was estimated, to have been 4 to 6 feet in length. PC Harwood said the colour attracted me, green, right, because he said the colour may have been caused by the low clouds. And he said, I have never seen anything like it before. The member of the public, Basil Gibbons, age 67, he likened it to, what do you call it, a Gemini space capsule. Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because a Gemini space capsule has no wings. So how could it fly? Right, okay, the next one. This was in 1966 in Cheshire. Now, if you remember Cheshire, guys, that was the same area in 1977 where 3 children saw a silver-suited entity. Right, so it's not far from that, right? An on-duty uniformed police officer, a PC Colin Perks, was on foot patrol in Alderley Road in the above town when he saw a UFO moving across the sky at an altitude of only 30 feet. And it was only 100 yards away from him. So he described it as being 30 foot in diameter and as bulky as a double-decker bus. He said there was an eerie greenish grey glow in the sky. He said, then I picked up an object about 30 foot long and built up in 3 sections, with the top looking like a dustbin lid. It gave off a high-pitched whine. Now, his words were, I was paralysed. I just couldn't believe it. Now, the duration of the sighting was 5 minutes before it disappeared. His police report was forwarded to the MOD, who did visit him to investigate his story. So when officers visited the scene a short time after the incident, the area was seen to be covered in a fine glass-like substance. Now, a fine glass-like substance, if you've ever heard of angel hair, and I'll put it there, right? Now, this is not common, but it's not unknown, right? Very much looking like a spider web. Was that angel hair? Right, a fine glass-like substance that was dispatched. Just a theory, but that's interesting, isn't it? Maybe that was angel hair. It freaks me out why a UFO would leave such a stuff, but it does, apparently. Right, now the next one, same year, Southampton, Hampshire. Now this is quite a good one, right? Following a report from a member of the public that a UFO was hovering motionless over the city, a marked police vehicle was sent to investigate the claim. Now, when they arrived at the man's address at Coalford Road, they were amazed to see the object where he claimed it would be. Now, they contacted police headquarters by radio and said, he's right, you know, there is an object in the sky in the west and remaining still. They said it keeps flashing red, white and blue and dropping flares. There's no sound of an engine and it does not appear to be an aircraft. So the inquiries went, right, they contacted Eastleigh Airport, but that proved negative, as did when they contacted Southampton University Air Squadron. They didn't know anything about it. And eventually they called the Southern Meteorological Centre, and that also proved fruitless. So eventually the UFO disappeared at high speed in the direction of Eastleigh. So you can genuinely say then that that is an unidentified flying object. Right, the next one, right, was between Potters Hill and Bristol Lusgate Airport, 3 o'clock in the morning in Avon and Somerset, right? A PC Lester Stenner and a colleague were driving along a quiet road when suddenly they saw an oval, again an oval, shaped UFO approximately 100 feet off the ground above the road ahead. Now, at the same time that the object appeared, this is not uncommon, the engines of the police vehicle died, as did their headlights, and also the street lamps lining the road went out. The object just appeared and remained motionless for about 10 seconds. When it did disappear, as soon as the object had gone, the headlights on the car started, the engine came to light, and so did the street lights. The officer described the object as being around 100 yards wide by 50 feet and made no noise whatsoever. That's the thing, it made no noise. Now, the officer did not report the incident fearing ridicule. Eventually, it obviously became on the Prufos's database. So that's the last of them, all right? I will always add police sightings each week we discuss something. So today, we are going to cover the weird cross-shaped UFO that menaced the UK in 1967. Now, I've got to tell you, I get most of my UFO stories from UFO Insight. Check them out. They're really, really cool, all right? So you pay a little subscription, and I highly recommend you do. UFO Insight, fantastic website. So I tend to get my stories from there. Now, an incident in the countryside of the south end of England, in October 1967 would soon progress into a wave of sightings of a Pacific cross-shaped UFO. Now, this happened around the entire United Kingdom, but I am going to put it on my map, and I'm going to put it in Okehampton, and I'll tell you the story, right? Perhaps what makes this apparent surge of cross-shaped UFOs all the more interesting, the MOD would receive over 365 official UFO reports, compared with only 95 the previous year. And this is the important thing, and that many of the witnesses are police officers or people with military backgrounds. And you know how keen I am with police officers because their statements are great. In short, they are well placed in terms of their experience in pressure situations. They tend to keep a rational mind. They also will be very well aware of the dangers of ridicule for speaking out on such, to some, or to most in those days, outrageous matters and claims. Now, with that in mind, they must surely have been confident in what they had seen, confident enough to risk their reputation and even their careers. So whenever you get a UFO spotted by a policeman, he is telling you the truth, all right? Now, despite the official stance and ultimate dismissal of these reports by the military of defence, it is clear to most UFO researchers that something very strange was taking place over the skies of the United Kingdom in the last week of October 1967. But you know what I think? I think there's always something weird going on, always. We had a fluster in 1977, right? It was a little after 11:25 on the 25th of October when former flight administrator officer, a bloke called Angus Brooks, was walking his Dalmatian and his Alsatian dogs in the countryside, right near the Downs in Dorset. An extremely strong wind that came out of nowhere. So, as his dogs wandered around and explored the morning air, right, he would make the decision to lay in one of the indentation hills to shelter him from the biting gusts. So, however, when he did, he could immediately see a contrail high in the sky. Now, he watched this strange aerial apparition for several moments. Then it faded, and in the same place, an equally strange but solid object appeared. Right, it moved at lightning speed and was descending rapidly. Now, Brooks, a former Second World War photographic interpreter, was almost perfectly placed to take in a mental picture of the object. So, he would go on to describe it as a central circular chamber with a leading fuselage in the front and three separate fuselages together at the rear. In short, it was in the shape of a cross. Now, he would watch the object for approximately, 22 minutes, during which time his Alsatian had returned to watch the strange object with him. He would later describe the craft as having a translucent material. Okay, so after hovering, the object suddenly burst into light and vanished in the sky in the east northeast direction. Perhaps bizarrely, and on a rather unusual twist, the witness's Alsatian would always become nervous when it returned to the area following the incident. So maybe there was a scent, something that got the dogs back up. Do you know what I mean? Now, Brooks would report the incident to the Ministry of Defence in London. However, their response was one of dismissal, then of genuine interest. Of course, they are going to dismiss it. They would ultimately, right, suggest it was his eyes playing tricks on him and that he had entered a dream state while resting. Now, perhaps not surprisingly, Brooks would dismiss that suggestion. And do you know what? If it was a beautiful sunny day, we've all been there, haven't we? A beautiful day. You lay in the field, I reckon you could fall asleep, right? But he was uncomfortable. It was a biting gust. You aren't going to fall asleep in that. You're just not, right? So we can dismiss that idea, can't we? Now, furthermore, throughout the entire country in late October, sightings of UFOs were being reported. For example, only the previous evening to the sighting of Angus Brooks, a retired RAF wing commander, Eric Cox, would see 7 bright lights while driving through Hampshire. Now, he would claim that the lights were in a V formation for several moments before 3 of them simply vanished. What remained was like a sign of a cross. There were several sightings on that same evening as well. Now, he said he saw a V formation, a bit like that sighting in America, and I can never remember what it's called. It's not the Philadelphia, the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights, right? Hundreds and hundreds of people, even the mayor admitted that he saw something unworldly. All right, and that was a V formation. Check it out. The Phoenix Lights is really interesting. I believe it was December 1981, but don't quote me on it. All right, but they see a V formation as well. Now, another sighting was reported to the Royal Greenwich Observatory by an amateur astronomer that happened around 6:45 a.m. on the 25th of October. Now, unlike authorities such as the police, and most definitely we will all agree the military, the observatory was much more interested in getting to the real truth of the matter rather than just to present a semi-plausible explanation to quieten the public. Now, they would state that it was quite obvious there was something below the cloud cover, and furthermore, that something was not Venus. And I love that, right? Because Venus gets blamed for a lot of things. It's very much like swamp gas, swamp gas and Venus. You can see an object, I don't know, cigar-shaped, right? It could land in a field, and someone would go, yeah, no, that was Venus, that was. But they said it was definitely not Venus. So perhaps one of the most intriguing sightings come in the early hours of previous morning by 2 patrol and policemen in Oakhampton, right? And Oakhampton is there, if you can see it, and I'll put it over there, right? Oakhampton. Right, 2 days before the encounter of Angus Brooks in the early hours of the 24th of October, at just after 4:10 a.m, Police Constable Clifford Waycott and Roger Wiley were taking part in their normal patrol duties around the Devon countryside. Now, they were around 15 miles out of Oakhampton when suddenly a strange object appeared in the sky overhead. Now, Wiley would recall that it looked like a star-spangled cross, radiating points of light from all angles. Okay, so the object appeared to be descending almost in an arc. The 2 police constables thought it had landed, so both officers would exit the vehicle and venture out to take a look. When they did, though, it started moving again. It was not an aeroplane or a helicopter, but it was as large as a conventional aircraft. Now, the officers would go on to state that they had a distinct feeling that the object was watching them and keeping them at a safe distance. As they went to pursue it as best they could, it kept moving, right? Now, the chase would go on for just over an hour. At one point, the 2 police officers, doubting themselves, And what they were seeing would wake up a motorist sleeping in a lay-by to see if he too could see the strange object. Now, the confused man, a Christopher Garner, would attest, right, that yes, he could indeed see this most strange craft. And more witnesses, right? A nearby resident, Estella Crocker, would report watching the object from her bedroom window. Now, she would describe it as a starry cross that would hover just under the clouds for several minutes. And another resident, an Ursula Domet, would claim to watch the strange object head out to the sea. She would state it had 4 points of light that made it resemble a cross-like shape. So obviously, it is definitely a cross shape, isn't it? Now, 3 days after the sighting of Wycott and Wiley in Stalybridge in Cheshire again, at around 4:15 a.m., two police officers on beat duty would witness a bright cross-shaped object. Now, they would estimate it to be in an altitude of 1,000 feet and was moving in a northeasterly direction. Okay. Now, around a quarter of an hour later, and 3 miles away in Glossop, came another police sighting of a UFO. Now, writing in Covert Agenda, Nick Redfern. Now, we have spoke of him. I'll stick his picture there, right? Nick Redfern would state that 6 separate officers would witness and report the incident. Interestingly, they would also describe how the UFO would swing from side to side in a similar manner to a pendulum. Now, this, as Redfern rightly points out, is a description to be found in numerous UFO reports over the year. Okay, so would that suggest that every time you see a UFO making a pendulum kind of action, is it the same ETs with the same technology? It's interesting, isn't it, right? Interestingly, the police officer in Glossop was aware of the sighting of the officer in Stalybridge and were in direct communication with them throughout. It is almost certainly that the object each group witnessed was the same thing, and it would remain visible in the skies until around 5:30 a.m. So a good hour and a quarter. Then it was ultimately engulfed by the growing cover of clouds. So that could have been sticking around for ages because it was just hidden by the clouds. Now, why was 1967 such a unique UFO year? And I don't think it was, personally. I mean, if you look into it, the UK, same as America, probably the same as anywhere in the world, is buzzed constantly by these weird things. The thing you've got to ask yourself is, A, not if they exist. Is what are they doing here and what do they want? And more importantly, who's flying them, right? Now, in the middle of what at the time was the busiest year of UFO reports on record, this mini wave of cross-shaped UFO reports is perhaps more interesting than we might think, right? Because there were at the same time in late October several sightings of dish-shaped UFOs, oval-shaped UFOs, ball-shaped UFOs, spherical UFOs, and while we have no evidence of any type of interaction between these different types of crafts, or them appearing in the same location at the same time, the description of round, oval and cross-shaped aerial objects filling the sky reminds me of the Nuremberg woodcut, okay, of 1561, and I will pull it there for you, right? 1561, the Nuremberg woodcut, and that apparently depicts aerial battles over Germany, obviously, So, what do you think, right? Now, might there have been several different alien intelligences flying through the skies of the United Kingdom and indeed the entire world in 1967? And if so, what might the ultimate goal have been? Were they reconnaissance missions? And again, for what purpose? Why did such sightings settle down somewhat over the following year? I mean, were they on holiday? And why are the cross-shaped UFOs not sighted more often? What is a good question, isn't it? Might there have been a military experiment craft? Or might they indeed have been an extraterrestrial race one who spent time here before moving on to another part of the universe. That's a really, really, really interesting thought, isn't it? Why do we not see this cross-shaped UFO more often? Obviously, it's depicted there, right? What perhaps is more important, or most important though, is that an explanation for the flying cross sightings remain elusive, right? This, despite several claims by the RAF that the sightings were a US military refueling operation. Oh, I'm simply not buying that. What do you think, anyway? Right, well, this was UFO, aliens, and weird stuff. Thanks for sticking around. Please like, subscribe, and ding that notification bell. And next week, we will do some more police sightings, and we will fill up the map, because at the moment, it's filling up quite nicely, isn't it? All right, well, look, thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.